birthplace of Davy Crockett, who was born on this spot in 1786. At the time, this was the state of Franklin, a movement to organize a 14th state. Jonesboro was the place of the first meeting, and from 1785 until its end in 1788, Greenville was the capital of the state of Franklin. In this log house on the banks of the Chuckey River, Davy Crockett was born, as I said, in 1786. The Chuckey, the word, of course, and the correct spelling is Nolachukey, is in Indian lore, and it's also the spot where John Sevier lived. His home across the river was called Plum Grove, and he was often referred to as Nolachukey Jack. Now, Crockett was born here, and pretty soon his parents moved out into the Cove Creek section. And then when he was a small boy, they moved to Morristown and opened a tavern there, which you probably have already seen. Notice that the birthplace is a very small cabin of log construction, rock chimneys, appropriate antique furnishings, and the park around it is owned by the state of Tennessee. There is a large swimming pool, a visitor center, ample space for parking, campgrounds, and also picnic areas along the banks of the Chuckey River. Crockett went from this spot, as I said, to Morristown, and then he went on to into the United States Congress, and because of his disputes with Andrew Jackson over Indian affairs and other things, Crockett went on to Texas. There, of course, you know of how he was killed at the Battle of the Alamo in 1836, the 50th anniversary of his birth. The Crockett Bicentennial was held at this spot back in August, and at that time people came from many states to honor the 200th birthday of Davy Crockett and the 150th anniversary of his death. As we leave the Crockett birthplace, we ride along the banks of the Chuckey. We come to certain spots: Limestone, Chuckey, Raytown, and these villages figured quite prominently in the early history of Tennessee. Raytown was one of the most important of the early villages. It had a newspaper, all kinds of stores. It was quite a thriving village, but when the railroad came through in 1858 and stopped at Fullen's, which was the former name of Chuckey, then Raytown declined in importance, and Chuckey, the name which was given to Fullen's, took on new importance. Close to this spot are wonderful brick houses of pre-Civil War or antebellum days, which were owned by the Ernest family. And also on the banks of the Chuckey, you will see a marvelous three-story structure. The first story is of stone, and the two upper stories are of log, with a huge stone chimney. Coming on down from Chuckey, we come through Afton, which at one time was known as Home, and before that it was called Henderson Station, and was a place of refuge for the early pioneers who would gather in the blockhouse for protection against the Indians. Of course, the Indians at that time were the Cherokee, and before the Cherokee there was an earlier group of Indians known as the Woodland Indians who inhabited upper East Tennessee. They were particularly fond of the area around Camp Creek, which is nearby. As we approach Tusculum, we are entering the environs of the oldest institution of higher learning west of the Allegheny Mountains. The original Tusculum was known as Greenville College, founded by the Reverend Hezekiah Balch in 1794 on his farm, which is about 6 miles south of Greenville. Balch was a graduate of Princeton University, and his school was chartered under the laws of the territory southwest of the River Ohio, which was the name by which Tennessee was known from 1790 until 1796. Balch School continued there for many, many years until it was moved into Greenville in 1841. Now, in 1818, Samuel Doak came down from Washington College, and with his son Samuel Witherspoon Doak established Tusculum Academy. The two schools, Greenville College and Tusculum Academy, which became Tusculum College about 1842, continued their separate ways until the year 1868, and as a result of the vicissitudes of the Civil War, the two schools were merged, at one time being called Greenville and Tusculum College, and then eventually the name Greenville was dropped. But the charter of 1794 dates from Greenville College. The two gentlemen, Samuel Doak and Hezekiah Balch, were both graduates of Princeton, and the second president of Greenville College was Dr. Charles Coffin, who was a graduate of Harvard. So with these two institutions of learning, with graduates of both Princeton and Harvard, this more or less set the cultural pattern which Greenville and its environs were accustomed to even to the present day. Tusculum College has the distinction of having on its campus a number of buildings which are included on the National Register of Historic Places. The oldest building on the campus is Old College, built by slave labor in 1841 and now used as faculty apartments. It was told that Samuel Doak said to his slaves who built the building that if they did a good job, upon completion of the work he would free them, and to my knowledge that was done. Other buildings, notable buildings on the campus, include the Mccormick Building, which is the administration center, the library, which was donated through the generosity of Andrew Carnegie, Craig Hall, Haynes Hall, Rankin Hall, and Virginia Hall, which were all built through the generosity of the McCormick family. Mrs. Nettie Fowler McCormick, the widow of Cyrus McCormick, inventor of the reaper, became quite smitten with Tusculum College as the result of some boys coming from Tusculum to McCormick Theological Seminary in Chicago in the 1880s, and here they came under the tutelage of Dr. Craig, who was Mrs. McCormick's pastor in the Presbyterian Church of Chicago. She visited Tusculum on many occasions. Her family became quite interested, and she was responsible for the buildings, many of the buildings which you see today. One of the most notable, Virginia Hall, named in honor of Mrs. McCormick's daughter, was designed by Louis Sullivan, who was the architect of the Chicago World's Fair of 1892 and 93. It is the only building in the South which was designed by Sullivan, and has been much admired by architects of this generation. The entire campus of Tusculum constitutes a beautiful spot located at the base of the Great Smokies, which may be seen in the distance, and from 1794 until 1986, graduates have gone forth from both Greenville and Tusculum colleges to write their names high in the annals of American history.